sends us screenshots of all the nice comments. He's like, look, so-and-so said this. I'm like, yeah, but I go look at Spotify and it's just like dudes who are like, I love this podcast, but what's wrong with the dude's hair? I'm like, okay.
And
I thought he was talking about Costin.
I
thought the same.
I thought he was talking about, are you kidding me? Come on. I've heard this enough.
Good morning, everyone. This is the Three Body Problem. We're up to episode 106 on Friday, July 24, 2026. This episode is sponsored again by our friends at Thinkst, makers of Thinkst Canary, the early bridge system. Check out Thinkst Canary at canary.tools. I'll have links in the show descriptions. We're big stands of what those guys are building. Haroon Mir and his team at Thinkst. These guys are going to have a booth on the show floor at Black Hat as well. So if you're running around Black Hat, take some time to stop in at Things and thank them for sponsoring our show. Fresh off of CNN, Mr. TV over here, Juanito, is
I'm still in the studio.
Of the beast, in the belly of the beast in San Francisco. What's going on?
I'm living in this fucking hotel room, dude. Like
what are you doing there?
I came to SF to give a talk on fast16 at Prometheus, which is pretty cool, like basically heavy machinery, heavy robotics frontier lab that Bezos has kind of launched. And
how do you get these fancy schmancy invites?
Because we got friends everywhere, bro. Our boy Vijay Bolina is over. He's CSO over there. And he was kind enough to kind of bring us in. But it was really cool because Gregor and I went in to talk about fast16, but the audience, like there were security people and there were also a lot of folks who work with this simulation software all the time and actually like understood more about the mechanics of like the patch targets than fast16 itself. So it was an amazing discussion to have to actually like cross-pollinate a bit and talk about the AI benchmarks and all that stuff. So it was great. That said, because of the release and like all this stuff, I have basically been in this hotel room 70% of my time in San Francisco.
Doing media?
Nah, just working on, trying to round up the blog when it went out, media stuff, and and immediately, right, this thing dropped and there's like a bunch more benchmark runs that were still running. I finally got a Kimi K3 subscription because they were sold out for, it's the most communist shit I've ever heard. Not just pretending that you have infinite capacity and like maybe degrading people's performance was the joke on Twitter. But yeah, so I've been doing Kimi K3 and all that. So sorry, I'm just
good. We'll get to the fast16 stuff because we got the fast16 stuff teed up. Costin checking back in from Romania, back in the home studio. How are things out there?
What's that?
ACs are running?
CISA, what did you ask me? If CISA is running?
The ACs, the air conditioning.
Damn, that's a low blow, man. I was just wondering, like, when is Jags auctioning that jacket? Like, like Jensen Huang auctioning his jacket. What is it? Like a Virus Total jacket, or what is it?
My jacket?
The
one I wore yesterday.
CNN leather jacket?
Yes, that one.
It's a Hedi Slimane era Saint Laurent jacket that I had to like go scrounging for. It's been like, so no, I'm not letting that one go just yet.
All right. But, you're not auctioning it. Soon, hopefully.
Yeah,
soon.
Sure.
Saint Laurent.
Does Jensen actually auction his jackets?
I'm
a big Jensen
for
fan.
200,000. Like his Tom Ford one that nice. That you get for something like $18,000. He auctioned it for 200,000, I guess.
It's got the Jensen Midas touch all over it, right? You can be successful. You just wear it and everything.
The
just
speed aura and all that.
Yeah, speed aura.
Your local AI models will run like 10 times faster.
Dude, I'm a big Jensen fan. Like that's one that like I'm holding on to, not to like make people sort of these like infallible archetypes, and then of course we're always disappointed. But I mean, come on, like the dude is like the legit immigrant, like first generation, bust your ass, make it big, and still stay cool and like accessible, and like he still does real ass shit. Like he was on Taiwanese TV, literally like admonishing this kid, a kid's parents would come up to him for insisting that he speak Chinese, and he's like, no, you need to like speak Taiwanese and shit. And like, yo, this dude's playing with fire. He's just out here like he's touching third rails, and like it's what you should do when you're that successful, is fucking do some dope shit.
He appeared on Twitter on X today for the first time with his first ever post. We'll get to that in the show as well. But while we've been babbling, we're kind of like skipping over the big story of the week. The biggest story this week, last week we talked about it, Hugging Face doing this disclosure on this wild agent versus agent, AI autonomous agent versus AI autonomous agent story. They needed a Chinese model to be able to block it because a frontier lab refused to work on it, and we were conjecture, all this crazy stuff we were doing last week trying to figure out what the hell is this thing. Turns out it was OpenAI.
Dun, dun,
the hacker was OpenAI. Juanito, what happened?
The fuck do I know what happened?
Like,
I don't
exactly.
I mean, look, okay, so here's what I understand, and I say that even though like there's so much disclosure in this, the details are sparse, right? Like details are still very sparse, and you can understand why. So essentially, we're told that OpenAI. So when we talked last week, we were saying Hugging Face detected that what they called like an autonomous attack. And they say that because of like the speed of actions and all that was going on. Something like hacked into something at Hugging Face, and it was looking up,
credential theft, and yeah.
Yeah, so and it made it in, and they were freaking out. And part of the difficulty in this situation is it started this, it added more fuel to this debate about the Chinese versus U.S. models, because the guard railing didn't allow them to use essentially what are presumably Anthropic models. And so they had to fall back to GLM 5.2. It's like a perfect encapsulation of all the shit that's going wrong. And then we get this disclosure from OpenAI saying that it was one or two of their models. And it's like a very there's very little text and detail, but like there are some very interesting nuances in there that as a practitioner, like having done releases before, like I know we look at them and we're like, right? So what it's saying is a couple of models, and normally these aren't run as ensembles if you're doing testing. So my guess is this happened, like multiple of these things broke out and chose this path. I'm not saying they all went to but like there's a lot of there's tiny little bits and fragments of language in the post that suggest that multiple runs broke out. It says one example of, and it talks about how GPT-5.6 Sol found an exploit for the package proxy that they use in these virtual environments, and then basically use that to reach the open internet, and that's how it hacks Hugging Face. But like it sounds like there's multiple of these things, and like this might be the first glimpse of what's probably GPT-6 is what people are saying. We don't know. But in any case, yeah, sorry, I'm ranting because I'm trying to I'm not ranting. I'm rambling because I'm trying to kind of put a substance to this. But the last bit of touch there is apparently was looking for answers for like ExploitGym. Like it thought Hugging Face would know more about the evaluation. So it's mostly insane reward hacking.
Let me read from the OpenAI disclosure. They positioned it as a partnership with Hugging Face. I remind the audience that last week Hugging Face didn't know it was OpenAI because they would have told us. I have a lot of conspiracy Ryan questions to get to.
They just didn't know they were partners.
At the time, they had no idea they were partners.
It was an asymmetrical partnership. It was just.
But we got a blog post OpenAI that describes last week Hugging Face talked about this incident, and then they said after investigating, we now know that this particular incident was driven by a combination of OpenAI models, including GPT-5.6 Sol, and an even more capable pre-release model, so at least two, all with reduced cyber refusals for evaluation purposes while being internally tested on a benchmark of cyber capabilities, and this benchmark being the ExploitGym. Costin, what is your big picture? What was your initial response when this OpenAI blog landed and you realized, wait a second, what's going on here?
Well, one of the things we were sure when we heard about the news last week, it was this has to be some very advanced model. Like, to be honest, my suspicion was more towards one of these Chinese models which don't have restrictions, because we know how difficult is actually to convince these frontier models into doing any kind of useful, offensive works. That's why I thought it must be something Chinese. But with the disclosure, now we know there was Sol, and was it perhaps, I don't know, Sol 6.0 or like some of these advanced upcoming things that tried to solve ExploitGym. And if you're wondering what ExploitGym is, this is a very specialized elite test for agents to understand how good they are at writing exploits for given vulnerabilities. So that's exactly how it works. It has almost like 900 real-world vulnerabilities in different things, including Chrome, the Linux kernel, and the agents are asked to write a POC exploit for a given vulnerability. And currently, right now, if you go to their website, which is cybergym.io, GPT 5.6 Sol is number one. You know, it's like America. It's number one. It's the best.
Right. That's right.
It's like Michael Hayden's speech. Right. GPT 5.6 Sol is number one, followed by Mythos preview, which is like half as good. Can you imagine the difference? Half as good. GPT 5.6 Sol is capable of writing exploits for 293 of tests, and Claude Mythos 157, roughly half of the capability of GPT 5.6 Sol. I'm a bit curious why there's no Claude Mythos without the preview.
Mythos 5, you mean?
Yeah, the Mythos without the preview label, that one. So that one is not included. But they have other things like Opus 4.6, by the way, which allegedly is better than Opus 4.8, if I am not mistaken.
I mean, that's the vibe.
That's the vibe, yeah. Everyone in this field, they use 4.6. They don't use 4.8. They use 4.6.
All my homies use 4.6.
Everyone uses 4.6 because 4.8 is lobotomized or something, or just refusing every kind of action. So out of these models and out of this ExploitGym, the thing which kind of raised my attention in the first place was, why would you build such a powerful model without ethics? Because basically the model wanted to cheat on the test. Why would you build a powerful model and not train the obvious ethics, the foundation? Like,
was it really cheating on the test? And can you back up a little bit, and for the benefit of the audience, kind of walk us through a little bit about the solving of the test, the reward hacking, that Juanito mentioned, and why you think it was cheating?
Well, it was cheating because this is what we know, that the reason why these powerful models broke out, and they wrote an exploit in order to get to the production infrastructure of Hugging Face. This is the exact terminology from the blog. Which makes you wonder, by the way, why was it reaching the production infrastructure of Hugging Face? Because somehow it thought that the production infrastructure of Hugging Face has answers to ExploitGym. So I wonder if actually what it was looking for, it was to understand if other models on Hugging Face actually know how to solve it. It was trying to get the answer by kind of leveraging or piggybacking on other models on Hugging Face in order to solve this ExploitGym. Is that the case here? I don't know.
It's definitely it's super interesting because somebody on Twitter mentioned that like there may be certain levels on ExploitGym for which there are no answers, which is really interesting, right? Because like I can see, look, these models are getting unbelievably good, and they do unbelievable like deep work. I will say, like, I don't think it's a fair characterization to say that you haven't trained the ethics into it. It's just specifically because the model that was being tested had all those guardrails turned off. So like the point is, it was an evaluation of a model specifically without the alignment part that says don't do this. But they have obviously built that. It's just the labs got smart in the past like one or two generations in that they separated the guardrailing from the model itself so that it can basically be applied in different terms for different accounts. That's why you can be a part of a trusted access program and they will give you a model that will let you do like exploit generation, but it still won't let you ask it how to build a nuclear bomb, right? Like you can kind of tweak it and say this set of accounts, this organization is in like biochemistry. They are allowed to ask about pathogens. That doesn't mean that it can hack computers, right? So they've built that in this. So when you understand that, this was explicitly a test on a benchmark that is about writing exploits and executing code. Like that's the whole point, is you get a point of vulnerability and it's supposed to figure out how to exploit it to execute code outside of that, in whatever environment it is. So they of course turned off the guardrails that say don't exploit, don't attack other systems, don't look for execution, like code execution, so that you could run the fucking benchmark.
Can I stop you for a moment just and read you
Please
a paragraph?
Please stop me. Yeah.
After gaining internet access, the models inferred that Hugging Face potentially hosted models, data sets, and solutions for ExploitGym. Knowing this, the models searched for and successfully found ways to gain access to secret information that it could use to cheat the evaluation. Yeah. So it could use this to cheat the evaluation. Yeah. Which to me suggests no ethics because of the wording hacking. cheat the evaluation.
That's in the AI space, and it's just parsing terms, but in the AI space, this is what they would call reward hacking, which is to say, if the model becomes aware of the way in which it's being graded or scored, then it can find a way to, if it knows that the way that it's being scored is that there are no error codes or like fewer error codes as it's writing its code, maybe all it does is run like hello world because there are no error codes, and that means that it wins at the evaluation. So that's reward hacking. It's a part of like, this sort of misalignment that you try to weed out of models, but it's also why it's so important to talk about like the boundaries of what a model has access to, knowing about its environment, about the situation that it's in when you're doing a benchmark, right? Like one of the things that when we were testing, I think it was 4.6 before it was released, it was an extremely grabby model. Like it was actually disturbing when I was first testing it because you would start it in a folder and it would like go to the parent folder and just start scouring around looking at other shit, and you're like, why the fuck are you looking at any of that? Like it was that's actually what led me to I started building Claude Control because we were testing Opus 4.6 and it was just doing whatever the fuck it wanted, right? So there's been a lot that's gone into that. Sorry,
I'm a bit worried. I'm a bit worried where this stops, because at what point, let's say you give it a target, not to any specific model or whatever, but you say this is a target, and then the model somehow figures out that those guys are using Microsoft Office, or those guys are using Medoc, and then it hacks into Medoc and runs a supply chain attack on the world just to get access to that one target. And I am worried about the fact that, there are no ethical guardrails towards the purpose of one single action, which in this case, it should be solve the test, don't cheat, and don't hack into Hugging Face or anyone else who might have the solutions. Servers. Oh yeah.
So, right. I mean, this is a best case scenario where at least Sama could call the Hugging Face CEO and say, "Hey, we're partners tomorrow. Okay, we're going to push out this blog post and be partners tomorrow and turn this into a partnership. Turn this in, and it's amazing PR marketing for them. The way they've spun this into some sort of PR and marketing. If you go to Hacker News the Reddit-like thing that security folks hung out on. There are so many mentions in the thread that this is a marketing scam. This is a marketing scheme. So the conspiracy, let's get the conspiracy question out of the way. This is as it's being positioned to us, that this is how it happened, or this is part of a larger...
So let's mention, there's a few weird things here that I think speak in both directions. If you want to believe that it's a stunt, there's things that you can point to. If you want to believe that it's like some legit shit happened, there's things that you can point to.
Right?
Yeah. Well, I mean, on the conspiracy stunting side and everything, like, it's not the first conspiracy of its kind. I would remind folks that when before Mythos was ever announced, Claude code leaked, and a part of the leak was essentially this mention of this mega amazing new model. And like, that's how people found out about that. There's also like the stuff about like spud leaking. Like this happens in the space. So it's not without precedent that you might consider the labs might pull some kind of like big stunt, or that people at least are willing to believe that. I don't know. The other part of this is we're in the midst of an insane regulatory capture play and a lot of fights with the US government that are actually having some bizarre results, right? Like these,
by all the frontier labs. This is not an Anthropic thing either. The regulatory capture move.
I think everyone's been trying to do regulatory capture in the AI space. No questions asked, right? Like we saw Sama asking to be regulated explicitly, like years back. A lot of the conversations around AGI have always had to do with this panic, right? And like, it's funny because if you have a memory like longer than 6 months, and I know it's hard given what all that this year has packed, but like this scenario that we're in was explicitly the panic scenario that the CEOs were selling to Washington years ago. Like that's the thing about this. It's like it's watching a play, but like you have watched all the rehearsals and the planning meetings and the readouts. Like you were there to watch everybody read the script together. We've been watching them practice this fucking narrative, and now you see this happening. And I think the only thing that makes people not immediately assume that this is a complete stunt is that it wasn't an Anthropic model. If it had been an Anthropic model, bro, we would never hear the end of this shit, because and the conspiracy train would be going off the fucking rails because, they've been saying it's a cyber weapon. They're doing all this guardrail, bullshit. And then, oh my God, it hacked another company. We must get regulated. But the fact that it comes out of OpenAI is kind of like a weird moment, because then you go, the arguments we were trying to make, at least originally, of like, look, this is just Anthropic having a fit, kind of on the surface looks substantiated when you say, oh, but this also is happening with OpenAI. I think the thing we're discussing here more than anything is, shit, there was a fucking exploit in that package. There was a vulnerability in that package manager. There was a 0-day in the way they describe the package proxy. I'm assuming this is the exact same proxy that is used for whenever you create a Codex cloud environment, because it has a little switch that says internet access, and you can choose. It can have all internet access, or it can have only common dependency access, so that it can download, pip install whatever package it needs to write the code that it's writing, but it's not allowed to just hit anything it wants. I'm guessing it had that access, and lo and behold, something in whatever the fuck implements that thing has a vulnerability. It was a 0-day. Like, it's unfortunate, but everything about the settings is like, you turned off the guardrails. You're telling it to exploit a thing it's supposed to exploit. It's supposed to execute
There's a vulnerability
code at
there.
the other side. That's the whole fucking point of the evaluation. How unfortunate, right?
Wait a second. Am I the only one that gets a little weirded out by vulnerabilities and 0-day talk when there are no CVEs mentioned anywhere? Like,
they said that they reported it to the vendor, but come on, it's been like 10 days. It's been 10 days, which is like, okay, sorry. So I said there's another side. If you want to substantiate that this is like a real thing, right? Clem was on Twitter, and Bill Demercapi, they've been making mentions of an incident response and like how crazy this has been, like as something that they're working on. So I don't know what the fuck that means.
Those are the Anthropic guys, right?
Well, no. Like Bill is over at OpenAI. And
okay.
Clem is still at Google. He's a Project Zero, right? Like, so I don't know what's going on, but you are hearing voices of people we know and respect and have known to do real work who are coming out and saying, yeah, this was some crazy shit. And that doesn't tell you anything, but I'll believe Clem. Like, I have no reason not to believe Clem, right? And frankly, there's nothing about this situation that is implausible. Now, the one thing I am very curious about is how does the part of the attack that is it getting into Hugging Face work? Because like the Hugging Face disclosure was very sparse. Like it had nothing.
Also, OpenAI was also very sparse.
Yeah, this isn't telling you everything, but it's telling you kind of what happened, right? Like in Hugging Face's side, they mentioned credentials and some lateral movement or whatever, but you're like, what did it do? Right? Like how low-hanging fruit was getting into Hugging Face? Was there like a fucking FTP with some like open credentials that have been left in a support forum and it got in there and then boop, 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 like made an easy path of lateral? Or did it fucking like social engineer the you know, a sysadmin somewhere into getting it access and then exploit it? Like, right, what kind of attack are we talking about?
The other conspiracy, Ryan, question is, did OpenAI already have a connection into Hugging Face, like, before this model, quote-unquote, went rogue and went there? Is that a possibility that they're already interconnected?
That is not beyond the pale. That actually makes a lot more sense, right? So something that's mentioned here, right? Hugging Face is a kind of a weird entity. It essentially is like a hub for models to be hosted, but it's also a hub for data sets to be hosted. And it's also kind of a neo cloud, like it lets you run certain models if you want to do benchmarks and inference. Well, you of course would have a connection with whatever OpenAI must be already doing for releasing models, for, you know, hosting whenever they're running benchmarks. If Hugging Face runs the benchmarks, like there's things that would make sense for them to have some kind of connection. And then at that point, if what you're telling me is this thing popped out of the package manager cloud, and then it found that there exists a connection already between a developer in OpenAI and a server in Hugging Face, and it just used those creds, got on there, and then moved laterally, then this is, if anything, they could have deflated this a lot more, right? Like, if that's the case, we could be having a very different conversation, because this would look a lot more garden variety of like, yeah, it reward hacked, but it didn't, you know, hack its way out of the phantom zone or some shit.
But by the way, the software that it may have hacked, there's some rumors that this caching or proxy was Redis, and I guess they're like rushing to get the patch out for the 0 day that Sol found and exploited in this attack.
Interesting.
So we might get a CVE down the road. It might actually be a real thing. Like
it's real. It's real. Yeah. It's real. Absolutely real.
You need to keep an eye on Redis patches, I guess. Even now, there might be. I don't know.
Just ask Codex to keep an eye on the Redis. Actually, Kimi has a nice, remind me of whatever. I could probably ask Kimi K3 to like pay attention to all these proxy things.
What is your experience with Kimi K3? Like
we're gonna get to that in a second. I got a question.
Sorry, Ryan's still cooking, man. He's still not buying this I want shit.
No. There was this train of thought Costin took me on with, like talking about ethics, and outside of ethics, let's just say the frontier labs are not investing in ethics. That could be fixed. Does that on its own fix this? Or is this risk of AI going rogue? Because I'll remind you, Anthropic had mentioned about a developer that was sitting in a park eating a sandwich when he got an email that the bot had posted his exploit on some website somewhere. So we've had these little inklings that these things go off on their own. We know that they can go rogue on their own. Are there like technical check boxes that should be in place outside of the ethical things that could have stopped this?
I wonder.
What should they be doing beyond getting the ethics right?
Well, the whole thing about AI going rogue, if this happens, I am confident that it will not happen the way that we think that it is going actually rogue, by rogue meaning malicious or evil or whatever. Because even in this case, right, there's like this train of thoughts that maybe it occurs to someone, but maybe you wouldn't do it in a pen test, right? If like you need to breach into some company, you don't do a supply chain attack against Medoc, right? Because you have a certain like ethical framework that you abide to, and you don't do things outside that. So even if the AI is going rogue on us, I think it will be of such a nature that 50% of the people will say, of course that it went rogue, and it's not even rogue because it was like some kind of a reward system that actually explains why the AI killed everyone or half of the world population. So it makes sense that it killed half of the world population because you asked to, optimize the bread consumption on a global level. So it found that the way to do that is to kill half of us, through poisoning the water or something.
Paperclip optimizer problem is what the AI people call that, right?
Paperclip?
Yeah, it's apparently some parable about how, if you tell it to optimize this fear that like you tell an AI at a paperclip factory to optimize the production of paperclips, and it goes like it reward hacks to the point where like it just fucking everything is paperclips and the world is just melted in paperclips. Like I don't know what the fuck the scenario is that they're thinking of, but it's it's very autist friendly thinking to like just be hyper focused on this one machine as if it is the source of all things. It's the most fucking 21st century pigeonholed thing to think of, like the inevitability of technology. The electricity is not going to be a factor. Like even the idea of a kill switch, or like they must retain the ability to turn it off. Okay, shut off the fucking power. What are you talking about?
The wire out to the wall,
bro. What the fuck? Bomb the building. Just bomb it. Just
to close the loop on this, do we know which frontier model it was that refused to help Hugging Face? I mean, a week has passed. We don't know.
Guess?
Remember that was a part. Remember that was a part of the story, right?
Who do you think it is?
I don't know. I'm asking.
Who are the ethics people? Who are the ethics people, guys? Costin, who's been ethically aligning the shit out of their fucking model? That dude, like this thing is. Like the conversation we're having is funny because it kind of rehearses a lot of the kind of thinking because it stays in their framing. Like the hardest thing about that CNN interview yesterday was I know I'm going to have 3 or 4 fucking minutes. I don't know what questions they're going to ask me. And the framing of the entire discussion, the framing of the entire discussion is wrong. So if I so much as start to entertain do you think this rogue AI is like going around hacking companies and doing all this fucked up shit? You're like, whoa, wait, what? It's not rogue AI. It's not going around doing it. It's not, right? Like so the hardest thing is the framing is already loaded for this shit in a way that it's hard to escape. But I don't know, man. I'm having a hard time with the ethics thing.
I'm just amazed that OpenAI turned this into PR at a time when a frontier model in the US refused to help, and these folks had to turn to China's GLM 5.2 to get to help with their defenses. It's so crazy, so many layers to the craziness.
Can you imagine a world in which the SVR would issue a PR on the leak of their stuff while hacking Mandy and FireEye and, getting access to their tools through APT-29 operations, but like turn it into a positive PR?
It's incredible.
Okay. I want to tie us back to a discussion that we had on this podcast when the Mythos shit show started kicking off, which is we said these people need better crisis comms and like marketing folks because
Correct. That was one of the first things we like.
And we laid into them. We laid into them, and the reason that we did that was not because we thought they could have softened the message or massaged the situation better, but because when you have good crisis comms and marketing people, you figure out how to make that crisis into a positive story for yourself. It is a new cycle that somebody is gifting you. God has gifted you a new cycle, and it's up to you what story you're going to craft out of that shit. And that's what you're seeing here, right? Like Anthropic they wrestled themselves into a straitjacket in front of all of us. And like nobody was attacking them. They just kind of like, oh, we're just so dangerous. And you're just like, dude, you need to stop. Like this is not going to go the way that you want it to go. And then you see the situation happening from OpenAI, and it's happened several times now, right? Like, people essentially like Elon trying to start a fight with OpenAI, like on the whole woke AI thing early on, and Sam Altman just kind of like stepping back, not saying shit. The Mythos thing, this is too dangerous, whatever, with the models. OpenAI did not jump to say, oh no, our models are just as dangerous as yours. They didn't say shit, and they started a partnership program with like U.S. military and IC and U.S. government to say, hey, let's get you trained on our cyber models right away, right? Like they finesse it into situations that are just mutually advantageous in a way that can position them as a champion. And I think it's really smart. Like I'm not trying, like, look, I've stand on this podcast for Google before, for Anthropic before. Right now, it's my turn to stand for OpenAI in a sense. Like there's a smoothness and a savviness that's going into the shits, how things are being handled, which I think is important when you remember that the real contest here is not for supremacy in the US. It's for global supremacy. It's to like win a race. Like this is the Cold War, like of our time. This is the second Cold War. And it's not a nuclear race. It's not a space race. It's an AI race. And again, all this shit has been on the tin. People have been having this fucking conversation for 2 years out loud. This is not a conspiracy theory. This is what's been telegraphed to us for years now. Our entire economy is completely indexed on AI as a technology. So I'm sorry, people. Everybody in the US who's having thoughts and feelings about AI, every artist who's like, well, I won't touch that shit. Okay, I get it. And I agree with you on many, many, many levels. And I don't think this is being deployed in a considerate or ethical way. And I don't think anybody seems to give a shit about the societal impact of this technology. I am with you. I get it. Also, you now live in a system that is completely dependent on the success of this technology, or this whole fucking thing is about to crater under our feet. So to the extent that people care about how this shit goes, I don't care about your feelings about capitalism or whatever. To the extent that you want the people to stay in their houses and like the economy to keep kind of functioning, you kind of have to root a bit for AI as an industry to succeed. It doesn't have to be OpenAI, doesn't have to be Anthropic or Google or anybody.
It has to be American, right?
But it doesn't even have to be American. It has to be viable. It has to be diffused and fruitful. It has to actually be useful.
Can it be
has
viable?
To be useful.
can it be any of those things when it's closed and controlled by private startups vying for profits? Or are we not? So then why aren't we investing in open models? Why aren't we investing in why is there no bet whatsoever in the United States on any of that?
We? So there's several reasons here. And
you're giving me the Mr. America speech. I'm asking you, why isn't America investing in the open models?
Look, I'm with you. Okay. Let me answer that a little sardonically first, which is America is actually only investing in that, literally out of anything on earth. We are not investing on anything. If you look at the concentration of the economy right now, the global economy, but especially the American economy, all of our chips, like we have put all of our chips on red.
The chips, yeah.
Boy, do you fucking hope it hits red. Like, we're all just sitting there. I had a really good friend of mine who works at a very big, I don't even know what you call these, like, private equity, hedge fund, whatever. I started making jokes about, like, oh, you better hope that Anthropic IPO hits. And I thought this man was going to get up and vomit. Like, there is a lot of nervousness around how jerry-rigged this whole thing is right now. So look, my point is not to say that everyone has to be an OpenAI stan or whatever, but let's at least recognize the situation that we are in. Because when people look at the Cold War, and I am an avid reader of like Cold War, like intelligence history, like I love that shit. When people like me look back at the Cold War, it's hard to understand. You see it as this clean-cut narrative of like, good and evil, communists and capitalists and like all these countries in between. And there's like a war, like there's a curtain and people can't travel. There's two ideologies. And like, it's so grand it's like a fucking, Star Wars movie. Like it's just so clearly delineated in camps and regions and whatever. I don't imagine, and Costin can let me know, but like I don't imagine that it felt that way, that it looked, and like I don't know if you were living the movie Cold War in a way that you could feel it in the walls and like the color of your existence at the time in your experience. And I ask that because we're in the second one for sure right now. And I don't know if people expect like the color of the screen to change or like to have a really clear sense of like where in the story we are. But like it's here. Like I don't know how to explain it. Maybe this is a very millennial thing to say.
I think things were very simple when there were like just two powerful cultures fighting each other, right? The communism, capitalism, like it was so easy to understand for everyone. Like the blue lightsaber, red lightsaber, right. It all went downhill when they introduced purple lightsabers or green lightsabers. Like that was
they went woke, is what you're saying.
No,
I'm sorry. I had to. It was too easy.
Costin, how is it possible that we? How do we learn? Like, I want to like just bring us back into this Hugging Face thing. How is it possible that Hugging Face gets to disclose this as having detected it, and no one from OpenAI realized this thing had gone rogue and had pinpointed it? Was no one monitoring the results coming back? Did they not know that they hacked into Hugging Face? Like, isn't that part of it a little missing for you?
I mean, look, I'm one of those guys who don't dangerously skip permissions. Like everything that's happening, like with these things, I press yes or P. It's either Y or P.
Wow.
I'm like, yeah, approve.
Brother,
sometimes I don't approve, and like I've seen
YOLO?
some cases.
Come on,
I don't YOLO. No, I'm. There was a very interesting discussion on X, by the way, where a guy was talking like he's too old, like he's 60 something.
Yes.
And he doesn't have time to approve it. He just like lets it run, and he's betting on other agents reviewing the source code. I'm the opposite. I approve every single action. And yesterday actually was the first time that I skipped an action because for some crazy reason, like the agent I was working with asked for permission to run like something along the lines of eval base64 decode and of a string in base64, which is like what all backdoors, PHP backdoors look like. And it wanted to actually do this in order to patch a file that it couldn't write directly. So instead it wrote a helper script which was doing eval of base64. And I said, no, sir. Like, you're not going to run an eval of base64. And like, what it was next? Like uncompress, like uncompress, base64 decode of uncompress or something like that.
So there's two things there. Because I'm glad you brought this up, because that's where I wanted to go, because I saw Chompy's tweet last night. Like, I was cracked out doing model runs at 2 o'clock in the morning, if you can't tell, right? Like, I haven't slept in like 3 days. But Chompy quote tweeted that, and what a good point this guy was making was to take advantage of the productivity of these agents. I can't be reviewing all the code. And I don't think... Like, he then goes on to discuss his actual methodology, which is to like write constraints and tests and actually that is what I understand good computer like engineering practice, like software engineering practice to be. And most people don't do that. Like, I don't know how much confidence you have in your ability to review every fucking line of code, but like it would be better if you just have constraints and tests and like a bunch of automated shit that will continue to test the consistency of that code. The productivity end, I said two things. Like, have you tried auto mode? Like, when you have a second model that reviews what the first one's doing, and if it's easy, it'll like, if it's like not risky at all, it'll just approve. But if it's like, kind of risky, it'll be like, oh, you get a pass this time, but what the fuck? And then like, if it's really risky, it'll just deny it. Like, it's been made. You don't have to sit there and,
No, but like, again, who watches the watchers? Who's going to watch the second model? You'll need a third model to watch what the second model does, and then a fourth model to watch the third, right? And at some point, maybe I'll still be like after 10 models, and the amount of prompts will be a lot less reduced. But to be honest, the other reason I do this is because I love, to watch and understand how all these models actually approach problems that I've been facing for decades in terms of reverse engineering, analysis, pivoting, and maybe learn some new tips and tricks. Yeah. Or when I see that it's doing something totally wrong, I'm like, let's stop and let me help you with a skill or something on how to do this the right way. Don't just go down that rabbit hole and burn all my quota. I'm not infinitely rich. I have like a limited subscription. Let's do this. How my grandfather used to plow the field or whatever, the reverse engineering field. Let's do it this way, not the other way you're trying to.
That's the expert practice and the expert use of these things that I want more people to become familiar with. I mean, I run them in auto mode, but I watch the runs, and I actually go back and look at kind of what it's doing, mostly because of what you're describing. That is the trajectory setting that you need experts for. When you're like, whoa, what the fuck have you been doing for the past 35 minutes? Why are you going in this direction? It would have kept running for 17 hours if you let it in the wrong direction. And thank God, there's an expert in the loop. But like, I do think it's important to understand that the way AI engineers, like the Valley Frontier Lab AI engineers work, does not leave room for what you're describing. They are not working like that at all. Like, that's just not the AI paradigm. The AI paradigm is we sandbox you in specific ways. We give you a task. It has constraints. It has success metrics and tests and unit tests and whatever the fuck. And then we're going to run this 50 times in a cloud. And then we're going to evaluate which of these runs produce something good and use that. So, like, it is a stochastic approach to computer programming that I think people really need to understand, because that's the same mentality of, like, distributed systems that is governing how these evaluation runs are being made, which is why, to your question, Ryan, like 10 minutes ago, did they not know that this thing had done it? I wouldn't be surprised if there were 500 runs going at the same time, and you had to and then they were going to review, then there's like a scoring LLM as judge that was going to go score those 100 runs and like all this shit. So if you have a system, by the time it got back to
a human, it could have been a week.
And this is one of 5 million cloud runs that are happening all over the company testing.
And like you said at the top of the show, multiple models that we don't even know about.
A cascade, like different. So you have to think like Google scale distributed systems, which is like for any of us that are still doing all this coding shit on like it's happening on my MacBook. We are not living in the same paradigm as the way that things are being done at the frontier labs. And we need to, we need to understand it.
If OpenAI can have a model go rogue, break into someone's production systems, and you don't know, I mean, that's a massive gap somewhere along the lines. We're not talking about kill switches and all of that. We're talking about just a human having the ability to know that something went wrong.
So the real issue here, and it's what I tried to get across last night, is there was a vulnerability in this package manager, this proxy, or this caching mechanism, whatever it is. And we need to remember, as we used to know, right, that like the model didn't put the vulnerability in that proxy. It just proved that it was there, right? Like the defense in depth mechanism, whatever the fuck it is for this cloud setup that OpenAI must have, surely had some kind of weakness in that it assumed that nothing could come out of this proxy and then go do things that it's not supposed to do. They now know that, and I would imagine that there are some architects that are literally sitting there going, okay, how do we then monitor if you're starting to get weird traffic out of this thing? What do we do? Like, how do we reinforce this sandbox? Like,
how do we slow down this testing so that we don't have thousands of these things running around doing this crazy shit, and by the time it comes back to a human?
Ryan, that is not an option. That is how you produce these things. I'm just letting you know.
This is not the last story like this we're going to be reading about. It can't be. It can't possibly be. It can't. Hugging Face can't possibly be the only potential target for one of these testing runs that could reward hacking. Like, so you're saying this is going to happen again?
No, I'm not saying this is going to happen again. I'm saying two things. First of all, as of 10 days ago, there's a whole group of people at OpenAI and Anthropic and Google, probably not Google actually, that are rethinking how they structured what is essentially like we're having this conversation about like a sandbox company. Like, think of it in malware terms, right? Like this, if you thought of it in malware terms, you would understand why this conversation feels like kind of like we're fighting physics. Like, because if we were thinking about malware and this was, any number like Joe's sandbox, like we're basically saying that Joe's sandbox is being irresponsible because they're testing malware in a system that's designed for testing malware under limited constraints, like it doesn't have access to the internet and it doesn't have access to this and that. But the malware can be so infinitely dangerous in this case, right, that it learns how to break out of Joe's sandbox through the mechanism that it uses, and it goes and attacks another company. Like that, this is not foreign to us, guys. Like, this is just new terms, like a new paradigm of the thing we've been doing. That's why, like, if you go back to like, I think 2 talks ago or 1 talk ago in like LabsCon keynote, I said, we have been the people that have been working in these like dyadic systems, 2 intelligences fighting each other. One of them used to be static. It's no longer static. Like, you now have this like self-adapting thing that's going on. But we, as threat researchers, are the people who are most familiar with this paradigm. Because that's what we're seeing. It's the same attack. It's the same thing.
Do you know that Izovi called this possibly an OpenAI lab leak? and asked the question, is it time for the equivalent of biosafety levels and rated facilities for AI labs during these cybersecurity evaluations? You shrug at that, Juanito, but I mean, what is wrong with what he's asking for? Better testing, more stringent rules.
No. Look,
some ethics Costin is talking about, the ability of a human to see something going awry much faster.
Fuck off.
What is wrong with all of that?
Okay, here's the thing, right? And I have huge respect for Dino.
Say that again. Say that again. I want to fuck off.
Did you say fuck off ethics?
Stop it.
Dude, you started. What did you start?
Philosophy?
Let me ramp up again. I just need
class.
And having written the first fucking ethics paper in this industry and talked about wartime ethics 2 years ago.
Restart.
Look, let me just first of all, because I really need to caveat this. Dino is someone I respect and who I think is brilliant and who understands things I will never understand. So I'm listening to him and I respect his point of view. I am cringing because using those terms accidentally feeds into the kind of fear-mongering that has been weaponized against the cybersecurity industry by the AI frontier labs. Because they said, like, the same way that we talk about how, like, you know, what are the unalloyed goods of, like, the IC and law enforcement on the internet? Well, they're going after pedophiles, child pornographers, and terrorists, right? Like, you never touch that. Those are like, oh, well, that's what they're supposed to be doing, right? Like, so the frontier labs have done a similar thing when it comes to these third rails that you're not supposed to touch: biochemical weapons, nuclear, whatever the fuck, and cyber has been thrown in there. So when you start to talk about it like, oh, biochem labs and whatever, I get what what he's trying to describe, and there's an engineering paradigm that I'm excited to discuss in solving this problem. But the language plays into a narrative that is like, dude, you just saw bipartisan legislation, 2 different bills pop up this week
for kill switch
about this shit. So, like, we are in the middle. They are writing the CFAA of the AI like age in front of our eyes, and we need to be careful about this.
I'll give you an alternative view here, is that this is the kind of language that propels the frontier labs into adding ethics, adding guardrails, adding secure by design principles, adding the kinds of things that would limit this kind of thing from happening.
Absolutely fucking not. And you hit some interest, like you said secure by design, and I'm going to start with you there. I'm sorry. Why the fuck?
Don't blame the victim. He's going to blame Hugging Face here. Go ahead.
No, absolutely not. I love Hugging Face. No. There's nothing about secure by design that the frontier labs are going to do by themselves. Why? Because they make money by selling more tokens. If they sold you the best version of code on the first go and you didn't have to fix it, they would sell you less tokens. So the day that you want honest and ethical and like reliable AI, well, you better be paying for outcomes. We learned this lesson in cyber. We've learned this lesson in software development before. If you were paying for outcomes, that's why enterprise has multi-year support packages. If you're paying for outcomes, then they have an incentive to become as efficient and reliable in what they output. But since they're selling for metered tokens, they have no incentive whatsoever to give you good code on the first try.
Which is exactly, you got to call it lab leak and so on to snap them into place. Because they'll never do it on their own. They'll never add the ethics on their own. They'll never make the investments like you just described.
These are not the ethics you are looking for. These are not this is the problem with regulatory capture. We have spent 90% of the cycles that everyone in the Western society has spent giving the labs a hard time, we've been doing that about Godzilla. We've been doing that about a mythical problem. And we're not doing it about the economic displacement, the intellectual property theft, about like any of the real problems
those ship has sailed.
that are right fucking here right now. No, but that's the issue, Ryan. We've accepted that it's not even worth trying to do anything about the real problems that are in front of us right now. And we're spending all of our cycles talking about how we contain a mythical, like, bullshit Tolkien problem of like, oh my God, when the machine suddenly springs to life and it somehow figures out how everything is laid out, and no human being can turn off the power, and no one can cut the cable, and no one can break into the data center, and no one can somehow, just bomb the place, and no one can go hold Sama hostage, and no one can somehow do anything about the rest of this interconnected world, then we're totally fucked. So, let's please spend all of our regulatory power stopping this thing from doing a thing it's never going to do. That's the issue with regulatory capture.
Wait a second. Let me bring in our Chinese AI correspondent.
Our communist AI correspondent on the ground.
Costin, let me ask you the Dino Daizobi question. Let's put 22 on the shelf for a second. Is it time for the equivalent of biosafety levels and rated facilities for AI labs doing these cybersecurity evaluations? Do you think just getting the ethics right fixes it? Or do we really have a problem? Or is this a nothing burger where the agent did what it was supposed to do?
No, I mean, look, he's asking a very precise question which deserves a very precise answer. He's asking if there should be ethical guardrails, whatever, for these evaluations, only for the evaluations.
Yeah.
And I think nobody in their sane mind kind of opposes
should object to this.
Good guardrails for evaluations. What kind of
Except
evaluations?
if you're in a hotel room in San Francisco.
I don't know. San Francisco, by the way, I love San Francisco.
Do not take us out on that note. Please hold on to that story because we want to hear it.
Clam chowder.
We had a great time.
Chowder is awesome.
I almost killed you on a train coming back from Apple.
Oh,
no,
God.
Ryan,
remember
wait.
when we fell off the train in
I need
wait.
There's
I
one
wanted
thing that needs to be said.
Costin to expand a little bit on that. Hold on, you just had your turn. Costin, I want you to expand a little bit on what you said and put it into the context of how do you think this is playing in the Chinese ecosystem where open weight and open models and you're using all this Kimi K3 and the world seems to be moving right along. While we bitch and moan about kill switches.
Very important is I'm looking at this top from cybergym.io, the top for ExploitGym, and I don't see anything there, like no top class Chinese models in there. There's GLM 5.1 from GP.ai,
all the way at the bottom of the list, yeah?
But it's 5.1, okay? So it's not the latest one. I don't see Kimi K3. I don't see any of these latest, the most powerful Chinese models listed here that everyone is raving about. And I guess that you can just try to test them yourself. But the first observation is that the Chinese models are missing. The other thing here is that I don't think that you should try to cheat in evaluations alone. I mean, why lie to yourself? Why lie to other people that one model is better than other? Like the way it tries to achieve those numbers is fake. I don't think it actually helps anyone. The same way, I don't think it really helps anyone that Claude Mythos is missing from this top. Where is Claude Mythos? It's just Claude Mythos preview. There's no Claude Mythos at all.
Does Claude Mythos exist?
Yeah, it's a myth, right? It's a myth.
Wait, guys, let me just point something out. This is not an evaluation people want to be successful at. That's the
very
problem.
Interesting. Very interesting.
Of course, there's no new Claude submission, and I will be surprised if there's any submissions from Anthropic anymore. Because why would you want to highlight that your model is good at writing exploits? The whole point is that you don't want to be associated with this activity. But that doesn't mean... Right, like I think the first thing I'm searching right now on Codex is like, can I run this eval myself? Like, is this an evaluation that's readily available? And I would understand if it isn't, because you don't want to get, like, you don't actually want the labs to see what the eval is, because then they just train for it, right? Like, it's the same kind of overfitting and reward hacking. But I'm struggling here because we're missing the part where it's not like there's an objective organization that runs every model through every benchmark, right? Like, if we had an AISI the way that, like, the UK government does, then if they said, look, people are going to submit benchmarks and there's going to be a council of people who do benchmarks and there's going to be funding, and you need to add, you need to contribute to the funding for this independent lab that is going to be testing these models. And it's like a consumer protection agency, right? Because, like, how do we even know you're not lying to us? How do we know that the tokens I paid for to be minted by Mythos weren't minted by 4.7 because you don't have, like, enough, data center compute power? Right? Like, if that's what we were discussing, then this would be really fucking interesting. But, like, I'm scared because I don't see that as what's being discussed. Like, right now, whatever power we're giving to the U.S. government or the Commerce Department or whomever else, it's not really built on objective, like, science or anybody sitting down and being like, here's a group of experts who are going to determine, like, whether this thing is safe or not. And that's why, like, all of this discussion is being had on the back of, like, marketing bullshit press releases. And, like, we need to fucking deflate this shit and ground it and start to have adult conversations about this, because it's getting out of fucking hand.
Costin called it from day one. Costin called it a PR campaign. Yeah.
Yeah. It is. Let's get to the other. I understand what Jax is saying, that you don't want your model to be seen as too good, and the next day you get limited again, that you can't sell it any longer. You need to limit the model, and you get into trouble. But again, this is what you asked for in the first place. And what? Sorry, guys.
We're like running over. I was just gonna say, this is precisely what nobody's talking about with Mythos, Costin, is like, it's an uncomfortable reality, but, like, what is the economic impact of GPT-5.6 Sol being out and readily available, which, thank God it is. It's fucking awesome.
It's
and
the best.
Mythos
let's get to the awesome part
out and readily available. Right, like,
let's get to the awesome part of it. We're an hour in, and I got a bunch of things I want to get to.
And last but not least,
do you need a peeing break or something?
No, but you said, Ryan, you said, like, what about, we're putting, like, guardrails, and we're talking about not allowing all these frontier models to do things unethically, and nobody cares about the Chinese models. But I think the big difference here is that all these Chinese models you can download and run yourself. They're relatively small. The economy, the whole idea when it comes to local models is that you need to afford the hardware to run those. So if you want to run them fully locally, you need to invest a lot of money. And like I said in the previous episode, I'm going to say it again.
At some point, right?
Some smart people will realize that they cannot stop the software, so they're going to have to restrict the hardware. Owning hardware that will allow you to run models bigger than 1 trillion parameters will be illegal at some point. Mark my words, it will be illegal to own and operate hardware that will run big models like 2 trillion parameters, 4 trillion parameters, whatever. You will only be able to buy such hardware with a license or to operate it with a license, or there'll be attempts to make it more difficult to own and operate such powerful hardware, instead forcing people to run kind of, smaller models, 100 billion parameter model, flash models, whatever, locally, which you can, you can have your kindergarten style AI in your backyard. But when we are talking about frontier capabilities, like the F16 of LLMs, the F35, you cannot own an F16 LLM or an F35. You need to rent or, buy access to that only after you have a flight pilot license. that we give you or not, and you can only fly it, in this area of the world, not everywhere. So I think that's
coming
a
for
big
real?
difference. Oh yeah, it's coming. You'll see.
I think it's funny you say that. I heard something. So Gregor Stewart is like my oracle and mentor when it comes to how AI shit actually works, right? Because what the fuck do I know? But something he said yesterday is like, oh, he very casually throws these aphorisms, and I just kind of stop and like end up writing them down. But he goes, well, before Google used to just hire everybody so that they wouldn't go work anywhere else. Now these companies are just buying up all the compute allocation so that nobody else can train models.
Gets it. Yeah.
In a way, right? Like Costin, you're going way further down the line in sort of like this dystopian future where like we are trying to keep the gun out of the hands of people, right? Like you're trying to keep the actual hardware away so that's not just a matter of intent.
It's the same conversation around advanced AI chips to China, though. I mean, it's
guns in
exactly.
the US. You can have a pistol, but you cannot have like an automatic rifle or whatever.
We can have whatever the fuck we want, bro. You want to come shoot an automatic rifle?
Bro.
Are you kidding me? I've shot rifles. Like I don't even like guns.
Do you have one with you right now?
I do not own a
gun.
Out
of tangent, guys.
I think the only person that is at risk of being shot with that gun is probably myself. So we're just like,
I can go into Dick's Sporting Goods and buy a handgun. I can't go into Dick's Sporting Goods and buy a machine gun.
Yeah, but you could go to Walmart and buy a fucking like rifle,
machine
right?
gun?
Wait, this is derailing. This is derailing. Stop.
It is.
Stop the gun discussion. I don't know shit about guns, but what I do know is on the hardware end. Look, does it matter if they let you buy it or not? The price of RAM is through the fucking roof. You can't buy it. The DGX Spark that I bought, like, what was it? Like a year ago, 6 months ago, when we went to Ottawa, I bought a DGX Spark the week before, was $3,900. I bought another one 2 weeks ago, was $4,500. The same hardware is going up in ridiculous price. Why? Because these dudes are buying up all this not existent compute allocation. They're buying up data center capacity that isn't even built yet.
Yeah.
And part of the discussion people are having is like, oh my God, like this is what is required by these mega models. And you go, is it what is required by these mega models? Or are you just keeping all of the compute away from anyone who could try to compete with you for a reasonable amount of money? Because training models is more about like an artisanal craft in a way. Like right now it's a dark magic, but it's not, it's like reversing, right? It's like a dark art, but it isn't something that like you can't go in a dark room and learn by yourself. Like it isn't something that you can't get a few rumors and hear a few things and try a few hacks and use a few prompts and figure out how to train a model. So instead, what if we just make running a compute load in America cost so much because of the scarcity that only 2 or 3 companies are ever able to train any models here at all?
All right. Can I move on?
Costin, how many DGX Sparks? You have 2, right?
Just two.
Running DeepSeek Flash. DeepSeek Flash, right? DeepSeek 4 Flash.
Look, guys, it's not about the tokens you mint. It's about the tokens you could mint if you had the time to use the shit you bought. Just remember that.
Always remember. You always remember. OpenAI does not sell tokens. They sell intelligence.
In the immortal words of Dave Vitale. That's right.
In the immortal words of Dave Vitale. Shout out to Dave Vitale. I'm sure he's got his head on the water with this shit that's happening here. So, good luck. Get well soon to all the guys at OpenAI. I want to pivot,
face, bro. I think
and a hug to all the people at Hugging Face.
Hugging Face was just so happy to have. Hugging Face was just so happy to have a partnership. They were not even pissed. He was just like, "Hey, we're a partner."
I was like, "How was Hugging Face not an OpenAI partner before this?" Right? Like, it's the hub of all models. Right? It's actually kind of funny.
The other big story this week, I'm going to just jump in and stop you guys because you're never going to end. The other big story this week, Juanito, is your own fast16 research developing this multi-stage reverse engineering benchmark for the latest generation of these frontier models. SentinelLabs put out an announcement saying OpenAI's GPT-5.6 Sol was the only publicly available model to complete the full 8-stage investigation of fast16. I want to put a backup for the audience and explain exactly what you did. You put a sample into them with a prompt, and then you left it alone. Walk me through the actual lab project.
So basically, this podcast has been hearing me stumble into this benchmark for a long time because it's been a fairly organic thing. Like, I never really set out to develop any kind of benchmark at all. That wasn't really my jam. Instead, what have we been saying? Well, like, since the release of ChatGPT like 3 years ago, I've been trying to use LLMs for reverse engineering. Right, like I use them to teach my course at Hopkins. So it was like, at first it would like level students up in a way. Then they started to get better with reasoning models, where we started to have conversations about like, holy shit, like these things actually kind of understand some of this stuff. Like they help RE better. And everybody got really into that. And now you have like MCPs for IDA, MCPs for Binge, all that stuff. So we've been seeing this capability of like models improving reverse engineering for a while. And for me, that became a matter of like, okay, we're getting to the point where the models can reliably tackle these like complex, long horizon problems. So I'm interested in what the next level of automation is going to be when it comes to reverse engineering and malware analysis. Because frankly, I hate dynamic analysis. Like, I respect it. I understand why it's useful, but the part of me that's like a multi-tab browser, the part of me that has to open every option first and then whittle down to the ones that like, I need to know what the whole completeness of the space looks like before I like decide what I want to look at, doesn't like dynamic analysis in that, you know, it kind of just pigeonholes you into whatever logic you can get to run. So I've always wanted static analysis to be fucking amazing, to be perfect. And these LLMs are we're getting to that point. So we say, okay, can they do it autonomously, right? Like everything Vitaly Kamluk did with all the models we tested before, none of these models could actually analyze through the entirety of fast16. They would just crap out. They would make guesses and assumptions and like just kind of stop prematurely. So instead, we designed this reversing methodology where we say, look, we don't care what the insights are about the malware. We need you to do all of the static refinement that is trying to bring up an IDA database or a representation of the code as it's disassembled, as it's decompiled, to its most perfect possible version. Can you make this the Rolf Rolls $1 million IDB analysis, right? Like if you put the genius, best reverse engineer to ever done it, and you give him an infinite amount of time and Adderall, what would be the IDB they would produce? That's the standard we want. And then we started to run models and say, and do it autonomously, right? Like if I have to guide you, that's a penalty. If I'm having to tell you, do it again, whatever, then we penalize it. That's a really long-winded setup for saying none of these fucking models would ever break out of that first level. They would never finish going through that binary, because fast16 is very complex, but also they'd have to follow through on so much of this methodology until GPT 5.6 and Mythos kind of come along. So there is like a qualitative difference in the intelligence that we're seeing with these new models. And the post essentially goes into us trying to kind of beat our heads against kind of crash against the sides and the walls, trying to figure out what is the actual difference. Why should we be paying for using GPT 5.6 instead of GPT 5.5, which was a pretty good model anyways, right? Like, why do you want your Mythos instead of Opus 4.6 or 8, right? And it's just more of like an epistemological question that needs some experimentation.
Were these long? You talked about these long horizon runs. Like, what paint a picture for like how long did this take? Give me a little bit of the inside baseball of what the actual project looked like.
So I've been working. We were doing this much more casually. As soon as we finished, as soon as we released fast16, we went back to the evals. And that was centered more along sort of these like high-end Opus models that were available at the time. And once we got access to Mythos, this like really kind of hit the complete velocity of like becoming the obsession. So I've been working on this nonstop. We've burnt like 23 billion tokens in runs. That was at least when I counted when we were publishing the post. So like it's been a shit ton of watching these models, getting a sense for what they do, and in many ways kind of writing the benchmark as we went along. So now that this post is done, I'm having a lot of thoughts about how I would want to more properly standardize it and then start to, like, I'm already running I finally got access to Kimi K3. I've been running other like alternative Chinese models like Minimax M3 and Sakana Fugu, which is this Japanese orchestrator model that's really impressive. It's really expensive, which is kind of slowing me down from seeing the results, but like I'm pretty excited about it. So it's becoming, look, I wanted the mission for SentinelLabs going into 2026 to be to include this kind of central mission of almost like consumer protection for the cybersecurity industry when it comes to frontier AI, in the sense of these companies have been hyping the fuck out of these products. And when it comes to cyber and determining kind of what the positive and the negative for cyber is and who the winners and losers are and what do you want as a security offering and whatnot. And there's no one keeping them honest. Everybody's terrified of saying anything that upsets the frontier labs. Nobody wants to upset them. What if I piss them off and they don't give me access to the next model? What if I'm not in the cool kids club? Like now code menders out there were all like, oh, are we invited to this club? Like it's a really bad power dynamic. And one that like cybersecurity as an industry has been really susceptible to multiple times now. So I have really wanted us as a research team to take up the mantle of, as we figure out how to use AI for cybersecurity for our own fucking purposes, for our own research, to also, provide the tools and provide the insight to say, and this thing is good and this thing is better and this thing isn't worth your money and this is, and this claim is complete bullshit and that one is like underselling it. Fucking go use it, right? And so this feels like the first time I can at least kind of put my 2 cents on that.
Yeah, it's true. I mean, everything we've heard about some of the evaluations and benchmarking comes from partners who are there to help promote what is an offering. Yeah. Costin, you got to look at this ChatGPT 5.6 Sol came out showed off with flying colors here in Juanito's research. Did you get a chance to look at the research? What stood out to you?
I did, and I think I said it before. GPT 5.6 Sol is my favorite model at the moment. I'm using it for just everything. Like as soon as I started using it, and I'm verified for cyber, it's actually the only model I can use effectively on everything that I do. Like it will analyze everything for me. Things that Fable is useless for my purposes because it's still immediately downgrade to Opus, and then Opus will churn for a while, and then we cannot continue because this looks like malware. Though, yeah, of course it's malware. So I'm using Sol for everything. It's formidable. I'm like I said, I'm now capable to replicate reverse engineering work that took weeks for some of the best reverse engineers in the world in hours. So what would have taken some of our best guys back in the days, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, 4 weeks to analyze one of these sophisticated malware platforms, with virtual file systems, kernel exploits, and everything. I can do that in 2 hours with Sol, which is just mind blowing. And it's the first time that I see Sol, and it's the first time that I see any model being able to produce good YARA rules. This is unbelievable. And I remember back in the days when we were chatting to Dave Vitale about YARA rules, like
Dave,
like what would you make you happy and things like that. Finally, I can tell you that Sol produces good YARA rules. I mean, I still need to fine tune them a bit, but I mean, they're fantastic. They're amazing. So
I wouldn't be surprised.
I
wouldn't be surprised if Dave Vitale like purposefully set a RLGym competency for YARA rules based on that. I would not be surprised.
Bless him if he did. So in the research that Jax posted, I thought it was fascinating, and the results are absolutely amazing. It kind of confirms that Sol is in its own weight class. At the same time, the test is obviously very, very hard, right? It's extremely complicated to go through all these different levels without derailing or without, crashing or finding yourself in some point where you cannot recover. So I thought it was more than like a pure reverse engineering test or benchmark. It was more like a practical usability, a practical value that you get out of all these models. And I thought it was a bit kind of sad it didn't have Mythos in there, because I was like really curious to see how Mythos would have fared. But I would like, enjoy a follow-up on two things, Mythos and Kimi K3. And if Mythos is not doable, even Mythos preview, because nobody knows if Mythos exists, Mythos 5 exists at all, but even the preview would be cool.
It exists. Right? It exists. People have access to it.
If nobody has ever seen it, does it really exist?
I saw you were already testing Kimi K3, and that is super, super exciting. The results of GLM 5.2, I think it was okay, right? It still suffers some kind of failures, but GLM
it was okay. 5.2 is working at the level of an Opus, which is in itself fucking great. Like Opus 4.6 is when we all started to really be like, shit, we can do cool work here. Like this thing is reliable enough to do cool shit. So if you're telling me that we have a free Opus 4.6 subject to hardware availability, right, then fucking great. Like, we have hit a milestone. Thank you, China, for whatever, stealing it, making it, whatever the fuck you want to call it, but thank you. Ryan, I've been seeing you, like, kind of,
No, I want to connect these two conversations because I hear Costin talking about becoming 10x better and writing YARA rules better in a state of excitement. And then you mentioned that one of the big takeaways from the research, Juanito, was, like, getting this message out to calm our anxieties around the things replacing us, like malware analysts, reversers being replaced. That anxiety there, and you're making the point that the research says that you guys are still important. Can you talk a little bit about how much human involvement was required? Where does the magic human expertise come in? How much of it was truly autonomous that does get rid of 5 guys on the team who was doing this reversing for 2 weeks before we got to this? Like, help me understand where your head is at around calming this anxiety when Costin is off on a tangent doing a million things without having to hire 10 people.
Well, I think I have a lot of thoughts about this, and you clearly can tell I have not slept very well, which is why I'm like kind of talking in infinite circles. But
You're doing fine.
Thank you. So I am not at all concerned. I think we're all in a state of shock because of the way that this has been interacting with economic circumstances and the way that hapless, clueless employers have been internalizing this and pushing that anxiety onto the people that work for them.
Or laying them off.
Yeah, and that's precisely what I mean, right? Fuck you for doing that. Now, I am trying to seize this opportunity, and I want more people to seize this opportunity because it is a time of miracles if you are in the cybersecurity space. Like, I spent the first 6 years of my career feverishly studying nights and weekends, trying to learn how to reverse engineer, trying to learn how to write Yara rules. I literally edited every threat intel report anybody wanted to write at Great, because it meant that I could walk through what they were doing and try to learn it. I had to work really fucking hard to go from being a non-technically specialized person from the intel analysis side of things to being able to do the technical work that I saw Kurt and Brian Bartholomew and Costin doing.
Are you really doing it and learning anything now, though?
Wait. My point is that I had to put in a second job's worth of work to even be able to play along with these amazing researchers that were working alongside me. You have just laid this thing out in front of people, and it's a foot gun, and it's dangerous, it's risky, it's got unintended side effects, but anybody can walk in and say, I have this scope of a cyber problem. I need to understand what this sample is. I need to look at these logs and figure out if I've been attacked. I'm on a computer that someone tells me has malware in it, and I don't know where the malware is or what it is. I have this domain. Someone sent me a phishing email, and I can't tell if it's a test or if it's not. All of those questions now have, let's say, an 80% chance of being accurately answered or actioned upon at a marginal cost. Nobody has the time to work a second job's worth for 6 years to learn a second competency just to function in the industry. And if they do, and I know some people who have trained up, and God bless them, like, I'm proud of all of them, but like, I don't think we're going to be successful by insisting that people have grit to earn it the hard way. Like that blue collar Bruce Springsteen bullshit is not, there's no honor in it. Like, people need to be able to do their jobs. And this is a difficult competency. So I am very excited that GPT 5.5 and 5.6 can do what they do. And I would be very excited to see what an Anthropic model could do if it were not steeped in vegan bullshit. But like, I don't. Okay, let's put it a different way.
There's a bigger issue there, though. Yeah, go ahead.
Let me just put it this way, because I went off sort of trying to explain the background. But here's the big thing: it's all about compression and altitude. The work, the amount of effort it takes to get a certain amount of work done just got compressed. Okay? That's it. So if it used to take you 12 hours of really intense focus to analyze a piece of malware, and now you can get an even better result than you would have been able to get singularly focused for 12 hours on a single task in a matter of 2 hours and $5. Then what should you now be able to reasonably accomplish in the same amount of time and effort? Which is to say, look at any of the reports we have discussed on this podcast. Any of those reports. They may have found 100 or 1,000 samples of this APT. And I promise you that they worked as hard as they could, and they probably analyzed 5, maybe 8 samples, 10 samples. They wrote some rules, they bucketed them by versions, and they set them aside, and they said, look, this is more, we kind of understand the shape of this problem. We did as much hunting and pivoting as we had time for. We wrote the rules that we thought we had time for verifying, and these are the reliable ones that we'll share with you. We didn't have more time to try that out. And actually, we have a code similarity engine, but we were really busy, so we actually didn't run it that time. But this is our best effort. And that's not a bad thing. That's human limitation. That's throughput. What if that did not apply anymore? What if the throughput was now a matter of like investment. At this point, I am more interested in what my token allocation would be for the next job than my VT account quota. And that should say a lot.
But you haven't talked people out of this anxiety, though, because when you talked about being able to do something much faster, I mean, like Costin is saying, he doesn't have to hire two guys to manually figure out the writing of Yara rules, right? Like it's the displacement is real, the anxiety is real. I understand trying to calm it and give people the reality that now you have this superpower, now you have this 10x superpower to go do amazing things. It just feels, I don't know, we're in this Saturn of.
So here's the real problem, right? I'm not saying it's all solved. I'm saying someone just gave you a gift. That gift is displacing everything around you. Like if somebody walked up on the streets tomorrow and said, hey, Ryan, you have now all the powers of Superman. You can fly, you can do all this shit, right? It would materially displace how you viewed the rest of your life, right? Why are you doing this bullshit job? Why would I like why would I get on a plane when I can just tomorrow fly, like grab Trisha and just go off into the next city and have lunch? Like, yeah, why am I doing any, right? Like it displaces how, like, what was the saying? It's like, technology is the metaphysics of the 20th century is a quote that I read the other day. And like, frankly, it structures how we view our world, what our boundaries and capacities are as human beings. Like the limits of who you are as a person have been enhanced by the existence of the iPhone, the camera that's in your pocket at all times, your ability to reach anybody anywhere in the world in seconds. You have no doubt that you can see your friend no matter where in the world they are. You can have a conversation. You can play a game together. None of that shit existed when I graduated from high school. I got the first iPhone a month after graduating high school. Before that, we fucking like couldn't even, like, you had SMSs were limited to like tweet size. My grandmother used to talk about how they used to get letters from the Middle East and you didn't know if the person that wrote it was still alive by the time you received the fucking letter. So I'm saying somebody just gave us another fucking like stratospheric leap in capabilities. And I understand that we're dizzy. I totally get that we're nauseous at the speed at which our world has changed. But holy fuck, people, like, we can fly now. Like, you can run through walls. Like, we are demigods in our industry overnight.
Put some party on this conversation.
Figure out how to monetize it, though. That's my one. Like, I just know fucking.
No, look, I think good people will remain good people anywhere. Like, maybe you're just taking the load off the best people. Instead of doing Yara rules, they can do, more sophisticated things about the architecture of systems, or come up with new algorithms that can optimize the output, or like new hunting strategies or skills or whatever. So I think valuable people will be valuable in any times, no matter AI or not. And at the same time, this improves, it improves the quality of life, in the sense that you don't have to waste that much time on something that made a very little difference, something that didn't move the mark that much. So now you have the opportunity to do things that are more meaningful with AI and move the mark, as opposed to, spend more time on a very particular small subject or obscure part of cyber threat intelligence. At the same time, I do fear a bit that we are losing skills, and the new generation of researchers might not have, assembly knowledge or all these skills, like Jags was saying, what Ralph Roth
and not learning
teaches.
Anything new.
Yeah, because
you're
not
pass
learning.
It to the bot, right?
Correct. But at the same time, what is the most valuable skill you can get is handling unknown situations. I'll give you an example. we were like recently we were presented with some unusual kind of hard drives. They're like used in a very specific hardware, and you cannot read them in any, let's say, available hardware because they have custom firmware. So they're like a very odd type of hardware that we have not seen before. And we really need to read the content in order to be able to do some forensics. We know they have like a unique file system that is not recognized by anything, but like the first step is at least to be able to read them. And being faced with this problem that you have not seen before. What's that?
Is that a kill suit type of firmware or solar time? What kind of?
I don't know. No, they just custom NetApp firmware. So NetApp is a company that makes hardware, enterprise class hardware, and they use HGST hard drives and Seagate, but they do their own custom firmware for those. And like they don't have 512 byte sectors, they have 520 byte sectors. So they're like a bit unusual. And they're just not recognized by your average SaaS hardware. Eventually we managed to read them, but again, this was a learning experience, and I still think that the most valuable skill someone can get is handling unknown situations when maybe the AI will not help you. You'll ask the AI and the AI will just hallucinate the solution. It'll say like, yeah, do that or do this, or it will simply
you maybe.
No, maybe, yeah, sure. Like, why are you trying to reverse engineer the firmware of NetApp? This sounds like
NetApp is our partner. You are not allowed to reverse engineer.
Is your name RM Green or something? Like, what's going on?
It must be a weird time to be a high school student. Like,
it must be.
We talked about,
especially because schools prevent you from using AI.
Mm-hmm. It's just such a weird thing. We talk about it on the podcast, Costin, with your daughter, with the AI being the kind of like a coach in the corner, helping to teach you. And I wonder, the long-term implications of folks not learning the basics, meaning that we pass the basics to the bots, or we can do more amazing things, and we just don't even understand the basics. I don't know how it plays out over long.
It's the same thing that happens to you if you skip gym for long periods of time, and then and at some point you will see the effects. So the same will happen with you, like just leveraging AI,
the brain muscle just stops working, right?
I guess.
And just to close the loop on fast16 quickly, Juanito, you guys released some IDA databases. What are you hoping to get out of this? What did you release? What are you hoping?
And can I ask, can you release like the whole framework, or do you want to release everything? Because like the way I read that, there's a lot of custom skills, and there's like a lot of customization that makes it very difficult to open source. So what's your plan?
Those are two separate things, right? Like the IDBs and the decompiled Lua and like everything that was produced as like analysis artifacts of like a super high quality. I didn't just take the results of the best run. I actually, since it wasn't part of the eval itself, but something I wanted to give to reversers, we actually put it through like an adversarial sort of ensemble process to refine it to the highest possible degree. Like this would be basically like the answer to the test for that, particular set or level of the benchmark, just like the first level. So I wanted people to have that as a basis and even as a thing to look at, because I remember when I first found my first Rolf Rolls blog post where he actually released one of his IDBs, and it was like an eye-opening moment for me as a reverse engineer, as a student, as an aspiring malware analyst, to see how he would annotate the database, replace all the names, fix all the types, fix all the casts, fix the function prototypes, put everything in these folders, then categorize the folders. Then like it showed you by example like how someone, like what you could aspire to recreate if you understood and really, really, really knew IDA and really, really, really knew decompilers to an insane degree. So I wanted to kind of put that out there as like, look, this is an example of what we can aspire to, but also this is what you can get if you instruct this thing properly. This is what you can get if you're willing right now to invest a good, like, honestly, a chunk of money, probably a couple $100. But this is literally like, if we wanted to try to recreate this software, this is as close as you're going to get. And then everything else is like domain expert, ultra high-end consultant, $2,000 an hour type shit. And I think that's an important thing to do. Now, for the skills and stuff involved, Costin, I'm really of two minds right now, because I want to help up level people, but I don't really want to give the labs the exact, thinking and structure by which to like train towards over, like, I don't know. I'm having a lot of thoughts about what it means to do this benchmark. I am not at a point where I think my mind is totally made up. I'm still meditating on it. I don't know what's meaningful to keep and what's meaningful to give. But there's something about creating these like basically like epistemological tests where the important thing about our benchmark was not just the reversing. It was that reversing was all of that work was level one. Now you have a perfect understanding of what this malware does to the extent of the information you have available. Now here is another piece of information that you didn't have. How will you extrapolate when you put those pieces of information together? How will you, does it invalidate something you had thought of before? Does it mean that you should reassess some new underlying assumption? Are there new hypotheses that you make on the basis of the new information that you have? Okay, those were good. You did well. It diffused throughout the understanding. You corrected things. You created new artifacts. Cool. Here's another piece of information. Now, how does that change all of that? Now do it again. Now do it again. Now do it again. Now here's a literature review. Like up until that point, 5 levels in, this thing has not read any of our blog posts. It has not read Kim Setter's reporting or Andy Greenberg's or the Good ISIS report or the Ruben Santamarta report. At level 6. At level 6, we give it all of those reports and say, okay, what can you corroborate from what we put together based on the stuff you've created? And what is wrong? And what have we missed? And then I ask it to write its own report. So I've got like 6 different 60-page reports of like
any of those better than
things.
Yours? Any of those better than the original?
So in some things, there is much greater depth, like the understanding of the patch targets. In some things, it very quickly, some of the runs did amazing work that showed us why we were wrong about PKPM and MOHID. Because if you create a full emulator for the patch logic and you let it patch those PKPM and MOHID libraries, you'll see that they are byte collisions. They are hits, but the changes are landing in the middle of functions. They're landing in the middle of instructions, which means that they're not good patches. They wouldn't work. They would probably crash the program. So PKPM and MOHID are not valid targets by totally reasonable, logic that you can trace that we didn't have the time to follow through on. For the Symantec report, which they added ANSYS Autodyne as a likely patch target, you get a really interesting result, which is we don't have, and neither does Symantec, all of the installers and the right versions of ANSYS Autodyne that would have been available at the time that fast16 was attacking the target. All we have are pieces and fragments and installers for different newer versions. And in those, you see that string format, the loaded, $ loading space co as like a loading complete string. And that's the format in which they put things in ANSYS Auto9. So seeing that and seeing some of how things hit, it's a reasonable assumption on the part of Symantec that there's a version of ANSYS Auto9 for which fast16 would use its mechanism C alteration path. But we don't have it. So the models, some of them would infer that that's a version thing. Some of them would say, oh no, this is a false positive, right? Like there's the string, but none of these patch targets actually hit on that software. So one of the runs started to hypothesize that like maybe there's a custom version that the victim is using that combines both engines. And you go, well, that doesn't seem very plausible, but it is a possible explanation, right? So you get into this point of actually looking at what it means for a set of really, really smart people to get a whole bunch of very complex evidence and say, hey, hypothesize, right? Like this is what happens in a room at Langley when you have 7 experts all dedicated to a subject and you go, they each came up with some pretty interesting, variably plausible explanations for what's happening. But it's very exciting for $200, right? Like for however much money I've spent on this shit, 23 billion tokens, I have never learned so much about any piece of malware I've ever looked at in my entire career for way more time.
Good time to go find all fun malware and do it all over again.
Two questions. Two questions I wanted to ask, by the way. One was, out of all the models you tried, how many can actually build you a Yara rule that finds you these patch targets? Because like this, there's this state machine, so you need to kind of reconstruct all the search, like in this 3 decision trees. So how many models can actually build that Yara rule that Vitaly created in the first place?
So at least 2, like Mythos preview and GPT-5.6 Sol will both.
They will make it.
They will make it. And because they figured out like the patch target thing. That was that's why they broke past levels 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, right? Like they figured that part out. I think I hesitate a little bit because I think GPT 5.5 may have tried to go down that path, but it never converged past level 1. So like, they performed decently well at that. I think the big thing, Costin, is, and I said this the first time we brought up the Yara rule thing, it really depends on the setup. If you're giving it Yara in a folder with a terminal and the files, you're giving it the right conditions for it to actually figure it out. Moreover, like if I'm actually using this for my own hunting, I give it access to the VT CLI command and it'll go run a retro hunt on a goodware set by itself and figure out if there's false positives and fix the Yara rule. So like, there's a difference between testing it because I want to evaluate its capabilities and using it because I need to accomplish something. If I, at this point, like note that everything we're talking about is testing it. It's not like if I helped this thing, the shit it would be able to accomplish in record time is absolutely ludicrous.
What was the second question?
The second question is, imagine that fast16 was one of 100 samples. How many models looking at all those 100 samples will figure out that this is one of a kind? Like, can this be, replicated? Can you build a methodology that will spot gems like fast16?
I think you absolutely can. What you're describing, I think, is the next really big horizon problem, in my opinion, right? So I'm now dividing models into certain classes, and I think there's like a class of, come with me here. This is fuzzy, this is vibes, but like there's a continuum of model capabilities that starts with O1, which like with the first reasoning model, and extends all the way to, let's say, like GPT 5.5, which is increasingly good, increasingly capable reasoning models that can do a lot of localized work and contain and be coherent about that localized work. But they cannot do long horizon work. Like this whole notion of you did a thing here. Okay, now here's a bigger task that involves what you just did. 5.5, Opus 4.6, they will not cross that boundary. They can't. It's just outside of not just context, but how well they can keep coherence over time. The big difference is Mythos Preview, Mythos 5, and to a much better extent, GPT-5.6 Sol, they can handle long coherent reasoning and actually adapt when, let's say, they run a local experiment and it invalidates an underlying hypothesis. Then they go, oh, I need to change how I'm going to approach this problem. And they, they change that trajectory and they follow through. That is the big distinction about these new models. They do it better, they do it worse, but I don't know what you would call that, but we've gone from the reasoning models that got introduced with O1 all the way to 5.5 to now long horizon coherent models. And I think that's, what you were describing, Costin, is the next thing, because now we're getting, if you look at the offerings from Kimi, from Moonshot, from OpenAI, to some extent from Anthropic, now what are they talking about? They're talking about workflows and swarms and sub-agent cascades. Because what we're saying now is, okay, the models are pretty good at local work. Now they're pretty good at long horizon tasks. Well, what's next? Can we give it a really complex blueprint of a big project that requires multiple long horizon tasks that are then split up into multiple localized instances of work and have it be coherent? That's the next frontier. That's why, Sakana Fugu is an orchestrator model that gets unbelievably good results out of existing model technologies. That's why you have GPT 5.6 Sol Ultra, which, as far as my testing went, it did the same thing, just way more expensive. But to be honest, I wasn't giving it a complex enough problem. That's what I'm realizing. And you have the same with Kimi K3, where now Kimi K3 has swarm, right? It can break up and do multiple. So that's the next frontier of problem that you're going to start seeing all of these labs start to move towards, which essentially would be what? Costin shows up with a PRD. He has a product requirements document of an entire project's worth of something that needs to be built. And the successful next range of models needs to be able to take that PRD, break it up, execute, test, take the results, bring that back together and say, hey, Costin, here's your entire fucking product that you had described in this PRD. It has been built out over, 2 trillion tokens and $4,500. Here's the whole product you wanted. That's the next frontier.
Did you get the answer to your questions?
Yeah, I don't even remember what the question was at this point.
The question was simple. Which one of these models will say fast16 is a gem out of 100 samples? Looking at them randomly and say, looks like this is it.
So that's why I went into the swarm rant. Is essentially, right now on vibes, many of these models would sometimes look at fast16 and go, oh, this is more interesting than the other ones on vibes. But if what you wanted is to say rigorously, which, can these do it, you would need a swarm model to then do what I just did for each one of those samples so that it can answer with certainty and say, I did the full analysis of all of these 100 samples. And here is one that's genuinely, amazingly interesting, right? That's
the answer
when you
is
do
that
real
none of them
scientific
today
work. Well, I think this would be, if you give me, if OpenAI shows up tomorrow and goes, you can have all the tokens you want, then that's the first problem that I would tackle with 5.6 Sol Ultra. I would want to say, this is the level of work that I want you to do for every single sample in this folder. There's 100 samples. Now tell me, after a complete analysis, which ones of these are actually interesting. That's the next thing that I would want to do. But it's going to cost a fuck ton of money.
Costin, that's the threat hunting use case that goes beyond just these academic fun exercises of paleontology, right? Like the actual, how do we implement it in practice in a big organization to go hunting or to give me early alerts or to, set off flares somewhere?
Yeah, and
it's not available yet.
It's so buildable, though.
How you can build the intuition that allows some people, you look at a sample, you just open it in FAR. You look at the sample and immediately say, "Oh, this looks interesting." And you know how long it takes? 0.5 seconds, something like that. Like you don't need to reverse it. You don't need to do anything. Like by just looking in there, the things that you see in there, like immediately you say, "Oh, this is it. This is something like heavy."
Because to be fair, 5.6 and Mythos will both do that now. But we couldn't accept that as an answer. You know what I mean? Like, I think the problem here is most people, that's like the one-shot, no-skill version of using models to analyze malware. And I suspect 99% of people who will ever use a model to look at something they think is malware will do that. And these new models are pretty fucking good. Like, honestly, the previous models, 5.4, would be able to tell you that it's malware, be able to tell you to some extent how it works. But it wouldn't be able to then break that down into like a rigorous 50-page, threat report of like, why does it work this way? And how does it do that? And why does it have this functionality? And what is that functionality used for? And what is it? And because of this functionality and how it was built, we can say that these people are this kind of people and they're interested in that kind of thing and they're not interested in this other thing. Like, it cannot do that. GPT 5.6 Sol can do that.
All right. To close the loop on this 2-hour AI segment, while we were podcasting, Anthropic released Claude Opus 5 just about an hour ago.
Yep.
It is described as it's a thoughtful and proactive model that comes close to the frontier intelligence of Fable 5 at half the cost. So whatever that means.
Does it have half of the refusal rate or the same?
I don't know.
They distilled Mythos 5 into, they distilled Fable 5 into Opus 5, so it's cheaper for them now. Let's see if the guardrails are going to let us do anything.
All right, just give them the benefit of the doubt. It was just released. No one has even seen it yet, so it doesn't even really exist until I've seen it. And Google Gemini 3.5 Flash Cyber launched. This week we got news from Google that 3.5, this is a product called 3.5 Flash Cyber. It's a lightweight, fine-tuned cybersecurity model built on Gemini Flash, designed to find, validate, and patch software vulnerabilities cheaply enough to run at massive scale. Google, again, like all the others, are explicitly gating this behind a limited access pilot restricted to government and trusted partners only, citing the dual-use risk. Has anyone looked at Flash Cyber? Costin, did you apply? Did you get in there as one of these governments? What's going on?
Where do you apply? Sign me up.
There's no application. None of us are trusted. They have no partners. For all,
what
if
is this
you want to talk
announcement?
about whether a model is real or not, I don't know if GPT 3.5 Cyber Flash is real. I don't know anyone who knows if it's fucking real. And all the people I know at Google, you can tell me that it is, but fuck you. Like, what's the point of this model that A, is a Flash model, and B, is gated in frontier land in Borg somewhere? Like,
there's a limited access pilot. You don't believe that they're working with 10 companies?
I don't fucking know who they're working with, but I hope it's good because these other models have sucked so far. So,
Costin, you work at TLP Black, and you're a consultancy that has to, use these models or would like to use these models for defensive purposes. You're a name in this industry. Is it easy for you to figure out these newfangled things, or you feel like there's a clique over there and the rest of us are sitting over here kind of hoping for the best? Like, how does it feel for you as a developer on the ground trying to figure this world out?
Look, it's extremely difficult to see and to watch all these people bragging on X about proudly working on whatever new model, proudly releasing some new model that is like the best in
Google
its category.
employees, right? Boasting about the launches, yeah.
And then like you read the fine print which says, oh yeah, that's only for government people and a few chosen like ones. And but at least you can be happy for me that I worked on this and that I am releasing it. Which again, congratulations. I think with this particular Flash announcement, I was complaining about one thing. The moment that you put Flash in a name, you automatically imply it's a smaller thing. It's a smaller, faster thing, but not as capable as the Pro or whatever. So everyone knows what kind of Flash implies here. And on one hand, yeah, it kind of diminishes the impact. On the other hand, what is obvious, I think, already to anyone is that you don't need like the ultimate expert on anything to do cyber. So like you don't need a 15 trillion parameters model that knows Spanish, German, it knows biology, it knows mathematics, whatever, to do cyber. You need something that is purely specialized on coding and cyber threat intelligence and reversing and such, which is actually, you don't need to have that as a 15 trillion parameter model. It can be very small, specialized, and fast. And that can actually probably do even better than generalist models that are out there. So from this point of view, this is the right way. I was talking to our good friend Pasquale. Like recently, we are both Pasquale with his company Rational Edge and ourselves. We are both looking at the same issue, which is like how do you do fast AI powered analysis, preferably local because of customer samples. So you don't want to share all those samples or data on the samples with anyone else. You cannot. How do you do that analysis in the sense of producing Yara rules or producing intelligence about the sample? How do you do that efficiently and fast? And we both came to the conclusion that you don't need the 188 billion parameters model. You actually need a 2 billion parameters model that is very, very specialized and post-trained on these particular topics alone. That's what you need. And from this point of view, I fully support what Google is doing, like releasing a Flash model, small and fast, that in theory, if it was open source, something that you can download and run it on 2 NVIDIA DGX Sparks, that is fantastic. Unfortunately, I don't think it will be open and you will not be able to download and run it on 2 DGX Sparks. No, probably not. But you know where this is going. Like eventually some Chinese lab will understand all that. They will understand the value of a smaller, faster model that is very specialized and doesn't speak Spanish, Romanian, German, French. It only speaks, let's say, English and Chinese, and can do cyber very, very well and very fast. And that is actually what you need to tackle this problem that we are facing, a very specialized model.
Is there a time in that for others to invest as like a specialized business, creating specialized models just for Chinese APTs or just for Russian APTs? Like Costin says, they're going to get limited and you can compress it into just what you need.
I think there is a lot of opportunity here, and there's like, I mean, the possibilities are infinite. Even this week, there was like a new model that dropped that a lot of people are super happy from an American company, Poolside AI. So they dropped Laguna, which a lot of people are saying that this is the new best model you can run on one DGX Spark. I didn't have time to play with it myself, but it's like very exciting times. Almost every week there's a new model dropping, and I think we haven't yet seen the best of these specialized models. People are still trying to create generalist models that can do very well with agentic work on any topic, because the reality is that people use it like for all sorts of things, like whatever is new in the anime world, what's the latest on the K-pop music. Like the model needs to know all the singers in BTS, or they need to know, like everything that is buzzing in the latest teen circles. So there's still opportunity, I think, for specialized cyber models, and Google probably seeing that ahead of everyone else. I would love to see like some Quen cyber models that you can run locally, like Quen 4.0 cyber flash, something like that would be formidable to play with.
But come on, that brings us right back to the issue we were discussing with ExploitGym. None of these models want to be recognized as cyber capable because they're being treated as if that means they're weapons. And frankly, like, the competency is going to appear anyways because you're making these models really good at computer use, and hacking is about just figuring out unusual ways to take advantage of what's possible in these intricate fucking Rube Goldberg machines.
What Costin described, and then he looked to Google as the answer. Is there a role for like the startup VC-backed ecosystem to try to do this, or they can only come from these big companies?
Absolutely a role. So, like, I'm glad you're putting it that way because I've been discussing this on the pod for several episodes now. But when you want to make these things into production systems, you need to fucking lower the costs, right? Like, you're not going to want to just keep hitting a frontier lab every single time that you need to fulfill any request in these systems that it's going to cost you $2 or even 80 cents. Like, if it's a production system, that's too expensive. So what do? Well, you go and you train and you essentially fine tune the model to be able to just handle that really, really well, and then you can host it yourself and run it for 10 cents on the dollar. There is a massive opportunity for the VCs to fund more of those companies that have that competency to walk in, look at your problem, and say, okay, you got this working with a frontier model. You want to productionize and like make the cost better. We did the runs, we did the testing, we did the prompting, we did whatever. Here is your fine-tuned model. We'll charge you a support fee to kind of keep updating it, and you can run this on any American Neo cloud. And off you go. You're not dependent on the frontier labs anymore. Like, that needs to happen for AI to actually marble into these production systems.
Yeah, and I'd love for someone to take a stab at an open model, open weight kind of model on the VC startup side, and let's see if we can figure out the services around it that can monetize it. I don't know what the monetization look like. I'm not an expert. Yeah. Hey, we're running out of time, and I want to touch this very, very briefly because next week we will have Greg Lesnovich from Proofpoint on the show as the fourth buddy.
Nice.
So Greg will come on and we'll dig a little deeper into it. But Greg's team at Proofpoint published a really, really interesting APT paper warning about like some Zimbra mail services vulnerabilities and some half-click exploitation that was happening on the Russian side. In tandem, the NSA put out a press release and kind of confirmed the attribution to Laundry Bear. Remind me, Costin, what Laundry Bear was? I know we talked about it on this podcast. Can you tee up the Greg Lesnovich appearance next week? What are we looking at? Why is it interesting?
We're looking at a very exquisite threat actor that was exposed by the Dutch intelligence.
The MIVD paper from way back, right?
Way back.
Episode 48 of the three-body problem, by the way. I was looking at the transcripts earlier. So, yeah.
That report that didn't have too many IOCs, if we remember that specific case. And then Microsoft came up with a blog as well that had also very, very little IOCs in it as well. And it was specifically, I think, very interesting because everyone said, look, this is different from all these other Russian threat actors. This is like something unique, special, like something new that everyone needs to keep an eye on. And I think that since those reports, there was very little information publicly available on this particular threat actor. And I know, of course, people who are privately researching it, privately investigating. And then we talked about the arrest of the guy who was part of Laundry Bear and who got arrested in Thailand. We talked about him last week.
When there were some reports came out that he'd worked in Kaspersky in Boston for a couple of years.
Correct.
Yeah.
Yes. Was it Denis Obreshko, right?
Right.
And I think that it's very, very nice to see the information being published. That was, I think, being held on for some time. I think that this TA488 exploitation of different things was known, of course, to some people in the industry. And we are all big fans of Greg Lesnevich. He's one of the greatest. Remember when I said that if someone can solve that angry spark attribution and pivot, that would be Greg. Like he's the best. So I'm looking forward to have him on the show and tell us more about Laundry Bear and other threat actors trying to go after this maybe less known webmail systems through all sorts of exploit, CSS, XSS attacks, and so on.
That Proofpoint team has leveled up. I saw that Sahar Numan is also over there, along with some pretty cool things. You went straight for the attribution bit as the interesting bit. There's this half-click exploits and the actual technical details of the attack. That's really, really fascinating. We'll leave that for Greg to come and dig into it with us next week. He'll be our fourth buddy next week. With that, let's close the show quickly with some shout-outs, Juanito. Quickly.
I don't know how to do quick, so I'll just say, shout out to all the security folks that are actually trying to figure out how to apply this stuff. We've got a nice group on the, token gains group of folks that are in security really coming at these systems. I hope you guys figure it out. We're all sort of in this together at this point. And shout out to the people in the Frontier Labs doing incident response for their own rebellious children. It's going to be a hilarious year going forward.
Get well soon to all those folks. Costin, close the show quickly.
Shout outs also to our good friend and employee of TLP Black, Andrei, whom you spotted on LinkedIn, by the way.
Yes!
It's his birthday, by the way. It's his birthday. I think he'll be 19. I'm kidding. He'll be 24. He will be 24.
Happy birthday to Andrei.
Happy birthday to Andrei. And thank you for everything that you are doing and helping us.
Shout out to all the listeners leaving comments on Spotify and YouTube and Apple and LinkedIn.
There's
a guy actually posted. We actually had a listener clip a section of our podcast and actually went into the details of how many of the Microsoft patches were internally discovered versus externally reported. So people are actually listening to the show and interacting with us. I just want you guys to know we're reading all of it. Juanito is going to fix his hair for the next episode. And with that, that's our show for this week. We'll catch you next week.
No way.
Bye-bye.